We begin with breaking news from the United States this hour. President Donald Trump has taken to Truth Social, his platform on social media, to threaten action on what his administration has labeled as domestic terrorism in Oregon's biggest city. For more on this, we turn to journalist Nick Harper, who's joining us from Washington. Nick, good to see you. Let's talk about what the president has in store for Portland.
Yeah, Natasha, this Truth Social post coming out of nowhere, although there have been some rumblings within the administration over the course of the last week that potential action was possible. This seems to be the latest crackdown on crime that he's really trying to target against Democrat-run cities across the country. So this Truth Social post, he says in it that this action was requested by the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and he says that he is directing the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland in the state of Oregon. He says this is all about protecting immigration or ICE facilities that he says are under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. And he also importantly finishes by saying, I am also authorizing full force if necessary. So that is the social media post. Lots of unknowns here. For example, how many troops could be sent, the timeline of when they could be sent and what exactly they'll be doing when they get there. But it's not the first time we've seen this type of action. Earlier on this summer, Donald Trump commanded National Guard troops to be out on the streets of Los Angeles. That was after protests against immigration raids. And then here in Washington, D.C., National Guard troops have been out on the streets for weeks, largely protecting the monuments, protecting train station and metro stations. But all of that, really, the Donald Trump push to try and crack down on what he perceives as crime in some of those cities. But the Democrat leaders in those cities often say there simply isn't crime along the lines that Donald Trump has listed. For example, in Portland, although there have been violent protests in the past, violent crime is currently down about 17%, homicides down about 50% overall for this year. But nationwide, there has been an increase on attacks against ICE facilities. Within this last week alone, we saw a sniper targeting an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, killing 2 of the detainees there. And we've also seen the Trump administration ramp up efforts to try and get this under control, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization this week, even though it is really just a loosely formed grouping of anti-fascist activists. And of course, 2 other cities also on watch, Memphis and Chicago. Donald Trump has promised that he will be sending troops there at some point. Again, no timeline on that.
Now, you mentioned the President's Secretary of Defense, and now he refers to it as Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has a highly unusual meeting coming up. What do you know about that?
That's right. This is likely to land on Tuesday this coming week. What's unusual about it is that he has commanded hundreds of top officials within the Pentagon to attend this meeting at Quantico in Northern Virginia, the Marine base there. The big problem is that nobody knows what the meeting is about. None of the generals or admirals who've been called know what it's about. Donald Trump, when he was asked in the Oval Office, didn't seem to know what it was about. If he did, he certainly wasn't saying. J.D. Vance, though, the vice president, has tried to downplay it, saying it's not unusual for the Secretary of Defense to call these types of meetings. Some speculation as what it could be involving, maybe layoffs. We've certainly seen lots of shaking up of the Department of Defense under Pete Hegseth, and he's also removed some top officials that aren't seen as being loyal enough to the Trump administration, but also some suggestion that this could just be a meeting to try and rally the troops. He is pushing this idea of a warrior ethos in the Department of Defense. He's been getting rid of what he sees as woke diversity programs within the Pentagon. So some suggestion, really, it's about gathering everyone together, a power play from Hegseth himself, and trying to get everyone on side in terms of his messaging and his vision for the future of the military in the US.
Nick Harper joining us from Washington. Thank you, Nick.